Today's new material, we're going to start talking about formulas and functions. To begin with, formulas. Right? So we can see down here that we've got A1 plus A2 plus A3, this range right here, we're adding these things up. We write that formula once and then we copy it over, and Excel does something really cool. It changes it for us from A1 to B1 to C1 like that. And that's great because we really didn't want to keep on adding up the stuff in A every time. We wanted to add the stuff up in B and then the stuff in C. So it just changes it for us as we copy it over. And that is really efficient and a very nice tool in Excel. So here we have something similar to what we were just seeing there, A1 plus A2 plus A3. This is just using Excel. It's a big long calculator. It is using cell references, so this isn't wrong. It's just not very efficient. What we would rather use is a function, right? A function is something that makes us way more effective at doing this, right? And so a sum, all that stuff. We just write sum. We write an equal sign and a prompt for the sum function, and then we use this range right here, and it does the same thing as all this, but a whole lot faster. So here's the sum function in action. You see we're summing up something there. We have some other functions like the average function that'll average numbers for us. We have the median, right? Pick out the middle number out of the range. And then we have the min and the max. That'll give us the smallest number in the range or the largest number in the range. And we have several different kind of count functions. In this case, we've got the count, and this means that it just counts numbers, all right? So it'll only count things that are numbers up there. It won't count anybody's name, won't count blank spaces, just numbers. Right? Then we have one called count A, and count A will do names or numbers, and text or numbers, and so the only thing it won't count is blank cells. So it'll tell you everything that's there, and that's the one that we use more as students. Count A is more useful to us. We have things like a mixed bag of people's names and their salaries and stuff, and we want to count everything except the blank rows. If we want to count the blank rows, we have, you guessed it, count blank. All right, so there's the function for counting blank cells. All right, so as we start trying to work with functions, we need to understand the syntax or the layout of these things. It's always the same. You'll see what we do is we write an equal sign, then we write the prompt, the function name, open parentheses, and then we have some kind of argument, a comma, another argument, a comma. Right? The only difference from that is sometimes we have square brackets around things, and that means that it wants an optional argument. It's not required, but if we add it in there, it'll change the way the function operates. Almost exclusively in this class, we will deal with the regular required arguments, and we won't get into the more complex optional arguments, with just a few exceptions. But for the most part, we're just going to stick to this in this intro class. Right? Another thing to note is that some functions have different amounts of arguments in them. Something like the today function doesn't have any arguments at all. It's just parentheses with nothing in there, and that's because today doesn't need anything else. It's today's date, so it doesn't need any kind of information from us. It's just has no arguments. Then we have things like the sum, which all it needs is just one cell or a range, and that's just one argument. And then we have more advanced functions like the if or the VLOOKUP that we'll look at this week, where there's quite a few arguments in there. So there's those three different types. I think I just described this, right? So we're going to have required arguments or optional arguments. Now this is really cool, right? So this is the dialog box launcher, and we use this as we're getting started with Excel to try and figure out what exactly we're doing in these functions here. So what I do is I want to write a VLOOKUP, so I go equals VLOOKUP. That comes up, and then I look at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is all of that stuff they got there right there? So I come up and I click on this button right here, this F of X, and it opens up this dialog box. And each one of these boxes is one of these arguments. So there's the comma, new box, comma, new box. And so what we can do is we can write these things in here, and it's really polite because it writes it in there, and we know that we just took care of that one. And it even says over here, it says okay, and it gives us red if it's not working, or black if it is, and it tells us what it evaluates to. So this is really handy as you're getting started in Excel and you're not really familiar with functions. Come on up here and click this F of X to open up this box, and it'll make it a lot easier for you with these more complicated functions with a bunch of arguments in them. So we have two date functions we want to talk about. One's today and one's now. Right? They're very similar. Today returns today's date, and now returns today's date and the time of day. These are dynamic functions, so that means that they'll change. If you stick the today function into a spreadsheet today, it'll come back with today's date. But then if you close it and you open it a month from now, it'll have the date a month from now and not the date that you saw in the spreadsheet when you closed it last time. So it's dynamic, so it changes. And if you want the date to stay there, there's other ways to do that. You can actually hard code that date into the spreadsheet. The last thing we're going to talk about today in this video is I'm going to introduce the concept of the logical function if. Okay? And what we're going to do here is we're going to start with the idea of an if statement, and that is to just say, hey, cell B2, are you equal to cell D2? It's either going to be true or false. It's a binary response. That's all we can get is true or false. And we can ask that with different kind of mathematical operators too. We can say, hey, you cell over there, are you greater than this cell over here? And again, it'll be true or false. Those are the only two responses we can get back. So now we can combine that logical statement into an if function. And the way to remember this is we say, if this is true, then do this, else do this other thing. Okay? And so there's our prompt for the if statement, and we'll get into that in today's demo, and I'll see you there.